Hello, and welcome to another Wednesday, another Umineko episode. Uh, yeah. Last week was an interesting one. This episode is going to be even more interesting. We are going to delve into Kinzo's backstory, and he's gonna explain to us some things that are going to lead to some other things that are pretty uncomfortable. So here's our content warning as a reminder to you all. Let's just kick the door down with that one. Hello Kat, how are you doing? Welcome. Content warning for this arc of Umineko. Keep in mind I will at some point add another warning to these. So this isn't it for all of them. The other one's fairly mild, but just in case. Just be aware. Content warning for character deaths, detailed descriptions of gore and body horror, child abuse, discussion and mentions of incest, discussion and mentions of suicide, and misogyny. Because yeah, last week we found out that Kinzo had a mistress, had a child with this mistress. As this child grew up, decided, you are the reincarnation of the woman I love, and you can extrapolate what happened from there. Those are thankfully all the details we got, but oh boy. Today we're going to delve into some stuff from when Kinzo was pretty young. And it's going to be interesting. I've already said that. Yeah, this arc gives away a lot and really sets up the sort of like why all the bad things keep happening. And it very strongly ties into what's going to happen in this arc. What we also found out last week was that Shannon's acting kind of weird. Kind of sus, you might say. And why that is, we don't know yet. But it was definitely strange, and it had something to do with Kano. Let's see. Was that it? It was such a long episode last week, but not a whole lot happened. I think partially because we went over what Rosa went through with the Beatrice that she met on the island in the hidden mansion, and we already knew a good chunk of what happened there that resulted in that Beatrice's death. So yeah, not a lot to recap today. Yep. Alright, in that case, I will start up the game. And in the meantime, Kat, you can tell me which VN you're playing, because I would love to know. Let's pop that window over there. There we go. Ooh, we're playing Higurashi. Nice. What do you think so far? Terrifying? Nice. I mean, what? I mean, that's what you expect from Higurashi, right? That's what I would expect. I would expect it to be absolutely horrifying. I haven't played the games yet. I haven't watched the original anime yet, even. But I have watched the sequels, hilariously. Because I've at this point read so much about the series without actually watching it that I was able to follow the sequel with no problems. Also, fun fact, the author for Umineko and Higurashi is releasing another game on the Switch soon called Loopers. That's out on the 2nd of June. And it looks really interesting. there's time travel and a mystery, and it looks really interesting. He didn't do the art this time. It's art by a different artist. Very nice art. But yeah, I'm excited to try that one out. I would even stream it, but then I'd have to get like a capture card and do setup for the whole Switch. You know, it would be such a hassle. But yeah, Higurashi is a good series overall. And no, not to be confused with the movie Looper, which I've only heard good things about, but, well, if you say it's bad, then, you know, I trust you. Alright. Uh-huh. I wanted to see it in cinema at the time, but didn't get a chance, and kind of forgot it existed after that. Kiryu-kun. Yeah, so as a reminder, this is Kinzo telling us about, let me double check so I don't give away any spoilers. Yeah, Bernkastel gave Will the power to basically make someone speak the truth, I think it was. Might be a little off with the exact details with that, but that's what was used on Kinzo to make him talk about his backstory. And this is what he looks like. Very much like Battler. Like, we've been told this multiple times that he used to look a lot like Battler. And yep, they were right. And it's a little like the Detective Authority, but kind of, from what I understood, it's like a leveled up version of that almost. Will, what did you sound like again? So, are you Kinzo? It's how grandfather looked in the past. I've seen photos. Just, what on earth? It's the theater-going power that Bernkastel gave me. Don't try to understand. Like angry Valor. Yeah. I'll just get a headache. You're getting the hang of this. Oof, my voice. At one time, Kenji told Battler that he looked like Kinzo in his youth. Sure enough, though the young Kinzo wasn't exactly the same as Battler, they looked very similar. Allow me to introduce myself again. I am Ushinomiya Kinzo. I sound like Battler now because Sam ran out of voices to do. Grandfather. Yeah, I was right. Even the voice seemed to resemble Battler's somehow. Clearly, Battler had inherited Kinzo's blood more thickly than any other. I did not want to succeed the Ushinomiya family headship. My being chosen as the head was nothing more than a prank of fate. In the Great Kanto earthquake, those in charge passed away, and you were selected from the branch families. That's correct. After all, Grandfather was wise despite his youth, and he already possessed a dignity fitting for the headship. Ridiculous. Those greedy elders were so intent on looking out for their own personal interests that they couldn't even decide on a new head. They were like fools arguing about who the new captain should be on a sinking ship. So, since you had no connections with anyone in the main family, you were selected right out of the blue. it's all because of my toes. If only I'd had one fewer toe on each foot, my life may have turned out quite differently. In the Ushiramiya family, polydactyly was seen as a sign of good fortune. This was because it was a common factor among many of the greats in the family's history. It was all very pathetic. The elders didn't care whom they dragged in as long as it wouldn't favor any of them over the others. So, they just happened to hear that someone in one of the branch families had 6 toes, and decided that would do well enough. Precisely. The elders didn't care what sort of novice became the head, as long as they could make him their puppet. In fact, the more ignorant this person was of how to lead, the better it would be for them. Grandfather. Leon. It is quite different in your case. You will be the one who inherits everything I have. That is the fate you are granted on the day of your birth. That is why I gave you that silver ring and raised you so strictly. You are quite different from me. You are already a splendid successor, of whom no one could be ashamed. Yes, sir. A puppet heir, huh? I doubt that could have been easy. As he pondered about where to begin, Kinzo laughed bitterly. It would probably bring back nothing but painful memories, no matter where he started from. It lasted for so long, that span of grey days. That mind-numbing stretch of time I spent dead passed like moss growing on a rock. I became the rope in the tug-of-war between the elders, who thought of nothing but their own profit, and I probably could have snapped at any moment. However, people are far more resilient than one would think. Though I spent so many days like a dead man, I was not killed. So I would have to search for death on my own. The next thing I knew, I'd reached the age when I could no longer refer to myself as young without drawing laughter from those who were. They were long, dreary grey days without any substance, and they lasted for a full 20 years. In 20 years, a person can be born, find a purpose, and even become their own man with their own place in the world. In short, if one truly becomes a human only when they have become a working adult, then I spent an amount of time long enough to create a human, doing nothing except playing the part of puppet to those greedy old men. Ironically, though that time aged my body, it did not age my mind. In my heart I was still young, and I look back fondly on the fulfilling days before I was summoned to Auaurora. Only my body continued to age, and at some point, the gulf between the two had widened to the point that it was hard to comprehend. So I could hardly believe that the worn-out man in the mirror was really me. No, it wasn't really me. I was the head of the Ushiramiya family in name only. I had no rights, no autonomy. There was no need for me to do anything other than what was asked of me. I was just a doll sitting there on the shelf, gathering dust. I remember nothing but lazily flipping through Western books I liked, locking myself in my own world, doing nothing but playing with roses and drinking terrible drinks. And it lasted a full 20 years. Before I knew it, I had a stranger for a wife. It wasn't any wife I had chosen. She was someone that the elders had chosen and forced on me for their own reasons, the daughter of some noble family or something. But that hardly mattered to me. I did not love my wife, but neither did I dislike her. I just didn't care. I fathered a few children, but that wasn't out of love for my wife. They were just born before I knew it. That's all there was to it. None of it mattered. No, that's not quite right. Everything was decided by someone other than me, and I simply obeyed. That was the job the Ushiromiya family had. On some level, I felt as though my life was being slowly and quietly snuffed out. I can't believe it. You've always been praised for being such a bold and wise ruler, and yet you lived like that for so long. Leon, there is nothing so long and insubstantial as a life you do not live for yourself. And yet, it passed in a blink. It passes in a blink, even. Take this to heart. A life. Bleh. That's Leon speak. A life you live for yourself. Living means having your own will. Get it? Will. You probably were dead during that time. Precisely. I wanted to live. No, I wanted to die. What must a puppet do to die? Cut the strings. Correct. That would be death. It would be life, and it would be release. Yeah, we all have will right there, so we are all alive. Or living. I guess those two are not the same thing. Excuse me while I drink some tea. Throat's a little scratchy today. Before I realized it, the world had grown troubled. Oh. I see that save reminder, thank you. Oh heck. I kinda didn't want to erase the thumbnail for that save file, but I have chapters unlocked now, so I can just find that chapter if I want to. Well, I appreciate the reminders, both for the saving and for the hydration breaks. Because I really do forget without them sometimes. And hey, if I beat you to it and you cash it in anyway, you know, that works too. World War II. My apologies. The Pacific War. Japan had extended their war fronts too far to the east and west, and the tide of war was changing. Thanks to the influence of the elders, I was able to avoid conscription. Of course, this was not out of compassion for me. It was because I was their precious puppet. So, the war never really felt that close to me. However, when I personally decided to abandon their protection, it was very easy. At that time, the Ushiromiya family had almost completely collapsed. And since the elders had apparently pilfered enough of the scrap to last them the rest of their lives, they seemed to care little for what I did, now that they no longer had any use for me. So, I realized that I'd finally found my time to die. One by one, I cut the threads I was hanging from, and began to search for a place to end my life. So, you searched for death on the battlefield. I thought that if I was going to die anyway, I should try to be of some use to someone. No, that's a lie. I probably just lacked the willpower to end my own life. War was a suitable excuse for death. I heard that your knowledge in public works and construction led you to being tasked with setting up facilities for the Navy construction team. And what a miscalculation that was. If I had just said that I had no useful skills, I would have been sent to the front lines where I could die at a moment's notice. So, you ended up not having to go to the front lines. Some of the others were overjoyed at their luck. It was the opposite for me. My only desire was to get my hands on the intoxicating liquor of battle and drink myself to death. The US planes did nothing but cut across the skies of that forsaken island. They didn't even have a bullet to spare for me, much less a bomb. Is this the time you met Beatrice, grandfather? Correct. She came to me from the sea. Where did you meet her? You mentioned an island. It was here. She came to this island. So you met her here, in Rokkanjima. What's going on? I heard that Rokkanjima was uninhabited until you bought it, grandfather. I never knew there was a Japanese military base here. Yes, you could hardly call that a military base. It was just a cave. I was one of the guards of that cave. (1944). Due to the honorable defeats at Saipan and Guam, Japan's absolute national defense zone strategy was in shambles. Where had the gallantry at the start of the war gone? The old attackers were now the ones on the defensive. At that time, it was said that the final trump cards for the Japanese military were the so-called special attack weapons. It was said that these ultimate weapons were packed with 1.55 tons of explosives, and capable of sinking any kind of warship with a single blast. To strengthen homeland defense, the Navy drafted a plan to build a string of hidden bases from Hachijojima to Yokosuka, I can read, all to house submarines loaded with special attack weapons. I knew that there was a base constructed on Hachijojima. To think that there is one on Rokkanjima too. Just what sort of fool decided it would be a good idea to plant a base on this desolate island? I have no idea. To better preserve its secrecy? Ridiculous. I could never understand what the higher-ups were thinking, and I didn't particularly care. These truly were ultimate weapons, able to take down large warships in a single strike. It was hoped that the presence of submarines capable of loading these weapons into waters just off of Japan would allow for a powerful sea ambush as a final line of defense. So, to aid in the establishment of a base with absolute secrecy, the uninhabited island, Rokkanjima, was raised as a possible candidate. An investigation of the island resulted in the discovery of a large cave in the cliffs, and this was apparently deemed to be a suitable location for a submarine base. So, you were tasked with aiding in the establishment of that base? Establishment? Certainly if you call digging out a cave establishment. Not only that, but the base was abandoned before its completion. Why? Because at that time, Japan no longer had any submarines large enough to carry one of those weapons. How truly laughable. What's the point in having a submarine base if there aren't any submarines left? If there's one thing that never changes, it's politicians and their meaningless projects. The base in Hachijojima was actually outfitted with those weapons and became a base for direct attacks, but Okanjima was never supplied with any. Not only that, they cancelled the construction work entirely, leaving only a crew of minimal size stationed on the island, waiting for orders from above that never came. Could it be the fact that it was a hidden base? Could it be the fact that it was a hidden base sealed our fate? The higher-ups had already completely forgotten about this useless and pointless cavern. We were nothing more than guards for a mere cave. We spent our days farming, fishing, and playing with the dirt, all the while gazing up at the American formations flying past. Some of our groups were relieved at the prospect of the war ending before anyone remembered we were here, and before any of us had to face a real battle. Of course, it was the opposite for me. I hoped beyond hope for the American troops to advance and kill me as soon as possible. And then, in one of those hollow days, let us go back there now. Back to the turning point in my life and my fate. And Ushinomiya Kinzo finally became alive. Yeah, I also noticed that the other base has a name similar to Hachijotoya. I'm pretty sure that's just coincidence. I don't think there's any like relevance to it. That's interesting. Yeah, it's just neat. Step it up. What are you doing, slacking off when the fighting's so close? Stars seem to spin around inside my head. I could just lie down on the floor, but that'd only make him more angry. I've no intention of being obedient. Still, it'd be stupid to get myself punched for no reason, so I got up and stood at attention. I'm just gonna look real grumpy about it. Fighting's close, is it? You really think the American troops are likely to show up on this forgotten island? Then let them come right now. That's what I've been waiting for all this time. What's this cowardly look you're wearing? Is this how afraid you are of death? Are you so afraid of those Americans? You won't be killing any of them with an attitude like that. They hit me again. Could you please quit your whining already? Filthy cowards. They give themselves over to this inexplicable anger because it's the only way to distract themselves from their own fear. Heart and spirit aren't any use when the battle becomes hopeless. When trapped by an insurmountable hopelessness, humans rely on several other emotions to escape their fear. These young, inexperienced soldiers found anger to be a very convenient emotion to fall back upon. They did drills by shouting in loud voices and swinging their bamboo spears around. Drinking the wine called anger was simply what they needed to do to numb their fear. The more one drinks wine, the more one needs to drink to get drunk. Their useless anger continued to pile up, day after day, without pause. As for me, I did not fear death. So, I had no need of the wine called anger. This made their cowardice all the more apparent to me. There you go again, that look in your eyes. Ushinomiya, your spirit is rotten to the core. You're a fish, that's what you are. You've got the eyes of a dead fish. However, it went both ways. Just as I was able to spot their cowardice, they were able to pick up on my lethargy. Is Ushiromiya Kinzo here? The lieutenant's looking for you. Stand up! No slouching about. Double time? Double time. I don't know why I said that as a question the first time. But, I don't know, I was confused about how to, like, do the intonation on that one. You said it twice because it's double time? Yeah. Let's go with that. It was all according to plan. First Lieutenant Yamamoto was the commanding officer in charge of the Rokkenjima garrison. He was just another filthy coward trying to forget his fear with violence, and would reprimand his subordinates for slacking off at the drop of a hat. The stories of his life he'd spout off when in a good mood were all about how much of a thug he'd been, ignoring the rules of society. On and on about how so-and-so was a prick so he taught them a lesson, or how everyone was so scared of him that he got special treatment. He kept on talking about what a vile human he was as though it was a badge of honor. Normally, I had nothing to do with this disagreeable lieutenant. He would always hang around with his non-commissioned subordinates, so as long as I treated him with a snappy salute, I could more or less ignore him for the time being. Now that the construction project on this island had been suspended indefinitely, there was no longer any use for an engineer like me. Just one sec. Oh boy. I think I did a little too much talking today. So, why did the lieutenant ask for me specifically? At that moment, I couldn't think of anything. Ushiromiya, I hear you're good at speaking foreign languages. Is that true? I am proficient in both English and Chinese, sir. The lieutenant liked to brag about his education in front of the non-commissioned officers, but he held a bit of a grudge against me for being even more highly educated than him. He also felt uncomfortable about having me as a subordinate because he was younger than me, so I was definitely not the kind of person he could hit it off with. Just the fact I knew several languages must have hurt his pride. I need to enunciate. I can tell that I'm like skipping parts of words sometimes today. More so than usual. Oof. Thank you, Kat. I appreciate it. It's I mean, it's fine. I try to do my best, you know, and then it's like, I can tell that if I start noticing that I fuck up a lot, then I get kind of like self-conscious about it, but it's fine. What about Italian? Do you speak that? I'm afraid not. So, you wouldn't be much help as an Italian interpreter, then? It should be possible if one of them speaks English as well, sir. Ah, yes, very true. Have you ever talked with a foreigner in English? I have, sir. Why on earth would he need an interpreter in a cave on an uninhabited island that even our superiors have forgotten? His question made it clear that someone who would need an interpreter would be visiting Rokkenjima. Good. Ushiromiya, you'll be my interpreter. That's an order. Also, all these people need to sound more like, I don't know, military people, and I don't know how to sound like that. But you know, you get the point. Hey, yeah, we all have like, you know, average days is today, I think. Like, it's not going terrible, but it's been better. But it's not like everything sucks. In terms of the reading, you know. It happens. But this is an important moment, so, you know, I don't want to fuck it up either. Yeah. I'm just gonna drink a ton of water. Finish my tea. I'm ready, I think. Maybe. That evening, I found out exactly what he was talking about. That pointless cavern submarine dock that had never been used, was now being approached slowly by a submarine of the Italian Navy. Of course, I knew that the Italians had been our allies. However, this was the first time I had seen anything from their military with my own eyes. What was the Italian Navy doing here? Didn't Italy surrender in 1943? What's going on? It was the Kingdom of Italy that surrendered. However, the ones who couldn't accept that surrender formed a pro-German government called the RSI so that they could continue fighting. The RSI? The Italian Social Republic. Also known as Salo Republic, I assume. You know your history. The ignorant often call the Italians cowards, saying that they surrendered first of the Axis powers in 1943. That's not true. The military of the Italian Social Republic fought bravely from the outbreak of war until April 29th, 1945. Sorry, I mix up numbers. Just making sure I don't say anything bizarre. And Berlin fell just 3 days after that. Far from being cowards, they gave one hell of a fight. Still, I'm surprised the Yarosai Navy even had possession of a submarine that could travel all the way to Japan. Even if they did, it's a surprise that they'd come out this far at all. Why would they come to Japan? To Rokonjima? The submarine was both weather-worn and massive. This dock had never even been used by one of our own country's submarines. I doubt anyone here imagined that it would end up welcoming in one from a far-off nation. All of the guards of Hirokonjima, of which there were only about 30, stood at attention as the submarine docked. Never seen the Italian military before. I heard a miner or some kind of accident trashed their sub. From what I heard, their ventilation system was hit and they couldn't stop the cabin filling up with chlorine gas. The lieutenant was hinting about there being something very important in there. You mean like a code machine or the blueprints for some new kind of engine? I couldn't care less what they're carrying. I'm more surprised that the higher-ups still remember that we exist. Move it, Ushiromiya. How are you supposed to interpret from over there? Yes, sir. On top of the hatch was a young Italian saluting us. Normally, this should have been the job of a commissioned officer, but his clothes looked like those of a sailor, and it really didn't look like he had the dignity and composure of the ship's captain. That probably meant that all of the commissioned officers in charge had died in the accident that had befallen this sub. crew members crawled out of the hatch one by one, but they all looked pale and entirely worn out. I wasn't sure how long ago the accident had happened, but being crammed together in a tiny sub filled with chlorine gas for any amount of time can't be good for your health. Adding to the problem of the broken ventilation system was the fact that they couldn't afford to travel about carelessly on the surface of the waters around Japan right now. They had essentially traveled here inside a can of poison gas. Almost all of them were unable to walk without leaning on someone else. It looked like a bunch of people staggering out of a hospital boat. Ushiromiya, ask them who the captain is. Tell them that I'm in charge of this island. Welcome to Japan. Do any of you speak English? The crew members seemed to understand that I was speaking English, but it looked as though none of them could speak it. Eventually, someone who seemed to be dressed as an officer saluted. Welcome to Japan. Are you the captain? I cannot speak English. Please, wait. The officer answered in slow, laborious English. After asking us to wait, he shouted something to his subordinates in rapid Italian. It looked as though he was telling them to get someone among them who could speak English. Ushiromiya, what are they talking about? They've asked us to wait. They might be looking for someone there who can speak English. At that moment, I heard a high-pitched cough. It wasn't a man's cough. It was a woman's. I speak English. As she came down from the hatch, a woman with beautiful golden hair said this in English. In this filthy cavern, the appearance of one as beautiful as she was seemed like an angel descending upon us. Welcome to Japan. Is the captain there? The captain is dead. That man over there is the only officer left. My condolences. Can we do anything to assist you? Well, we would like some fresh air and water. Some of us are still having trouble breathing. We'd like a place to rest. We would be happy to help. Do any of the others understand English? There were some who did, but they're all dead. I am the only one now. Ushiromiya, what's that woman talking about? Who's the captain? That man from a second ago? Who is that woman? Let's see some translating, damn it. The lieutenant wouldn't shut up. He must have been surprised to see such a beautiful woman appear from the submarine, and more than a little annoyed to see all of her attention focused on me alone. It was a mark of how divinely beautiful she was. Sir, it seems that she's the only one who understands English. She will act as their interpreter. Their captain is dead. That officer seems to be acting in his place. Who's that loud man who keeps yelling at you? Don't tell me he's your superior. Yes, unfortunately. He probably doesn't like seeing me have such a beautiful lady all to myself. Kinzo, you are married. Oh, I didn't expect such flattery from an Asian. Your English is superb. I imagine you've been brought up very well, unlike that rude man who keeps on shouting. They should have made you the officer in charge around here. Oh, I didn't expect such flattery from a Westerner. You're an interesting man. What's your name? Yeah, they do say use it or lose it, right? I guess that goes for flirting too. Ushiromiya Kinzo. If you don't mind, may I ask for your name as well? I don't know why, but like this moment with the music, like, put a big smile on my face, even though I know everything's gonna obviously not go so well long term. But that makes it very hard to talk and actually say the lines. I do love this game very much. Beatrice Castiglione. Welcome, Beatrice. Welcome to Japan. It's genuinely, when they first meet, it's actually genuinely really cute. Like, really. That was when I first met Beatrice. The woman who would capture my heart for the rest of my life. So, Beatrice was an Italian. Yes. She was the daughter of a high-ranking RSI official. Apparently, their most important cargo was her father himself. Sadly, he had already died by the time they reached Rokujima. Why would a high official like that come to Japan? You're saying he went through the Suez Canal and crossed the Indian Ocean to come all the way here? That's a good point. If they wanted to reach one of their allies, Germany should have been much closer. So, why would they make the long trip to Japan? It may have been part of some grand, outrageous strategy. I don't know all the details. But shortly after, I learned that this submarine's mission was far from a minor one. They said that there had been about 60 of them at the time of their departure. However, only about 10 of them, including Beatrice, had survived. Their submarine had apparently hit a mine or something in the nearby waters and sustained a great deal of damage. They told us that it had flooded rapidly with water, which had taken out the batteries and released a large amount of chlorine gas. Their sub had become completely incapable of continuing further. Nothing but a massive lump of metal floating in the dock. Since the sub seemed to be carrying something of immense value, the higher-ups ordered us to investigate. After questioning the Italians, with Beatrice and me acting as double interpreters, we concluded that this thing of immense value must have been her father himself. Apparently, Beatrice's father was extremely high up in the RSI hierarchy, and it was thought that he might have worked alongside the Italian Prime Minister himself. Though their massive voyage had apparently been part of some top-secret mission, now that the man himself and all of the commissioned officers had died, their reason for coming to Japan remained a mystery. And, since the higher-ups were telling us to investigate, that meant that even they didn't know what it was. Their ship had broken down, their mission was unknown, and the high official they had been carrying was dead. And even the Japanese government didn't know why they were here. The Italians' great and perilous voyage had come to a meaningless and utterly fruitless end. That's a relief. I always assumed the Japanese Ocean would smell like soy sauce. What a coincidence. I've always thought that Italians had hair made of pasta. Of course we do. You don't know how hard it is to get that perfect al dente texture. I imagine you Japanese all wear spaghetti al nero? Oh, you know quite a lot, I see. In Japan, we like to use squid ink instead of shampoo. You really are amazing, Kinzo. It seems you know everything. Have you ever been to Italy? Never. I've read a lot of your books, though. An Asian man reading Italian books? Wow, what kind of books? Niccolo Machiavelli and Dante Alighieri. So, of course, I know, of course, that you are the Eternal Lady. Oh, what a surprise. You must be quite the bookworm. Does this mean you came from some Japanese noble family? Who knows? You're completely different from those savage-looking Japanese soldiers. I can tell. You must have come from a noble family. Are the Ushiromiya some sort of Japanese aristocrats? You always thought British air smelled of fish and chips. Man, imagine. That would be amazing. Of course not. They just managed to strike it rich in the spinning industry in recent generations. I didn't study to prepare myself for nobility or anything like that. I just wasn't allowed to do anything else. Reading books, playing around with roses, and getting myself drunk were the only ways I had to occupy myself. Beatrice hadn't asked that question out of malice. It had just been a curious question asked to a friend from a faraway country. However, Beatrice was from a noble family herself, so she could tell. She could see the faint, gloomy look on Kinzo's face. Forgive me, Kinzo. I was so surprised that a high-class person like you would be a simple soldier in a place like this, that I didn't stop to think about why. I don't really care about my family line. The name Ushiromiya will mean nothing when I'm dead. And that will be what finally sets me free. So, you joined the army because you wanted to die? You mustn't do that. Your family would be so sad. Family? I have no family. I have a wife for the sake of public appearances, and children. However, I've never wanted any of them. Everything is a fleeting daydream created by the selfish, greedy old men. By selfish, greedy old men. And, hey, that still applies today. Eat the rich. And hello, Lulu. Thank you for passing by and saying hello. I hope you're doing good. Give me one sec. Well, I'm very glad to hear you're feeling better today. That's great. So, at least being stuck on this island, I can forget about all of that and find some peace. Peace. But haven't I spent each and every day complaining that I wasn't sent to the front and haven't managed to die yet? I can't understand the pain you're going through, but I do realize that my thoughtless words have hurt you. Forgive me, Kinzo. Forgive me, Kinzo. Oh, those words. I think they set me free. All the Japanese people call me Ushiromiya. Every time I hear it, it's a constant reminder that I'm the property of the Ushiromiya family. But she is different. She calls me Kinzo, not Ushiromiya. So maybe, just for the time I chat with her like this, I can forget that cursed family. Kinzo. I hadn't meant to make Beatrice feel guilty, but she seemed certain that her thoughtless words had hurt me. Thank you. Huh? You calling me Kinzo makes me feel like I can finally be my own man. I think that I finally met a person who truly sees me for who I am. Kinzo. You may be a foreigner I met in a distant land, but I know your heart is very sensitive and beautiful. If we had grown up in the same neighborhood, I'm sure we'd have become quick friends. I'm happy too. Oh, wrong voice. I'm happy too. You always call me Beatrice, not daughter of the Castiglione family. She really is a charmer. I mean, Kinzo too, kinda. That was pretty smooth earlier. We were both in the same position. Her Castiglione family must have been a rigid place as well. Though we came from different countries, we had finally found something we could truly understand about each other. Do you have a nickname that people close to you use? Nah. They would just call me Kinzo. Well then, you should stop calling me Beatrice. All of my close friends used to call me Biche. I'd like you to call me that too. Very well. From this point onwards, I will call you Biche as a sign of our friendship. I believe that comes from Beatrice, which is how it is pronounced in Italian. And in Japanese too, I guess. So it's like Beatrice with like all the middle bit, just the whole middle bit removed. Ah, come on. You can't talk all stiff like that. We're friends now, okay? And that is similar to how Gap addresses Beato, yeah. Biche, yeah. A bright smile stretched across Beatrice's face. It's also useful because it helps us differentiate between Beato and then the Beatrice that Rosa met, and then Biche. No matter how many decades pass, that smile will never fade from my memory. So, by meeting Beatrice, you managed to regain your sense of self. Or, as most people would put it, he cheated on his wife. If you plan to continue being rude, I suggest you get in the habit of covering your butt. After having his butt pinched once more, Will hopped around in pathetic agony. So, in your eyes, grandfather, Rokujima was always special for being the place you first met Beatrice. If I had never come to this island, I would never have met her. It truly is an island of miracles. Is there anything left of that submarine base today? Yes. It's still there, close to Kuadorian. It's in the shadows of a cove that can't be seen from the outside. After all, fishermen would never approach this supposedly ill-omened island. It is unlikely that anyone besides me still knows of its existence. Is the 2-kilometer-long underground passage between Koridorian and the mansion a remnant of that base? That is correct. There was some nonsense about carving a network of tunnels out of the limestone caverns, which would connect a number of bunkers across the island. I made use of those tunnels and had 2 mansions built, one at each end of the island. Two mansions, 2 families. The Ushiromiya family mansion, and the mansion for Kinzo, released from the shackles of the Ushiromiya family. Correct. It was something I needed. A place for me to escape from the cursed name of Ushiromiya. Still, I do feel bad for you. It must be awful to have come all the way out here and been unable to fulfill your mission. I really don't know what Papa's plan was. He said that we needed to run far away to hide it until the time came. And what is it? I don't know. It was something very important, and he planned to hide it for many years until the right moment. Oh, and he planned for us to remain hidden along with it. I know because he apologized to me that I might be spending a very long time on foreign soil. Didn't Ensign Angelo say that you had no cargo in particular, and that you were transporting your father instead? The ensign doesn't trust you or the others. Even I know a few things he's kept hidden from you. He might even know what Papa's goal was and what the cargo is. Yeah, Kinzo is just here, like, casually telling his relative that he kind of, like, hates his entire family. Like, oh hey, yeah, hey kid, I hate your dad. You know, don't care about him at all. Your aunts and uncles, yeah, same. Don't care about them either. You're great. Your cousins, nah. That's basically what he's saying here, which is, not great, you know? And they retaliate with pinching Will. But that's... I think it's Leon's protective, and also if Will is like really rude and Kinzo's like, you're too rude, I'm gonna stop talking now, they're never gonna find out. So I think it's a little like... I think to a degree it's self-serving as well, because they want to know what happened. So they shut Will up. Whatever it is, that's a mission for the Italian military. It has nothing to do with us. In fact, given that we're allies, we'd be willing to help if only they asked. I have no doubts that you're a good person, Kinzo. I've even told Ensign Angelo that you're a man we can trust, but... why is it that men always get so rigid and uptight when they're in a strange land? Normally, they're all very bright and cheery people. Ever since we came here, there's been this strange feeling of tension. Ensign Angelo has ordered that his subordinates be armed at all times. It's almost as though we're in enemy territory. That was true. The Italians were clearly the very opposite of relaxed. The Japanese soldiers watching this began to suspect that the Italians didn't really trust them at all. Well, that's normal for a soldier. This is precisely the time for them to straighten up their guard, so they don't embarrass themselves in front of a friendly army. have a person stand watch every time they sleep, and they're still keeping a lookout to make sure none of you approach the submarine, even though it's nothing more than an unusable scrap heap now. It almost feels as though they're acting openly hostile towards the Japanese, and that bothers me. True. They had set up a constant sentry by the submarine, and had refused to let any of the Japanese soldiers come near. This hadn't made the Japanese particularly happy. However, submarines are treated as classified in all countries. Maybe it was just natural for them to stop foreigners from approaching it without reason. They're probably uncomfortable with being made to live in a way they aren't used to. That boat, which is supposed to take you back to the mainland, is still being delayed by weather and problems of the command chain. Just how long will it take before they can send you there? We had been told that a boat was being sent for them directly from the mainland. But apparently, thanks to the weather, problems of the command chain, and the recent air raids, there were no ships to spare for a forgotten island like this. There might have been some sort of diplomatic problem. After all, their homeland had already surrendered to the Allies. I didn't know the details. The only thing I knew for sure was that they'd been stuck on Rokkanjima for 2 whole weeks, and no one had come to get them. Of course, we had some small boats at Rokkanjima. There was nothing physically stopping us from taking them to a nearby island. Still, Rokkanjima was technically a top-secret place, and contact with the outside world had been strictly forbidden. Well, nothing we can do about it. And it isn't all bad, really. After all, if a boat did come for us, I'd probably never see you again, Kinzo. True. To me, those 2 weeks were the first I'd ever truly lived. The faint 20 years before all seemed to vanish in the sparkle of those 2 weeks. That's a weird sentence, my guy. I realized that she would have to leave this place eventually, and yet, this one moment felt so rich and dazzling that I felt myself wishing it could last forever. Then, I heard a voice calling for Beatrice in Italian. It's Ensign Angelo. Looks like he wants you for something. Probably to scold me. These days he keeps yapping on about how I shouldn't get too friendly with the Japanese soldiers. The ensign approached, saluting Kinzo, and after glancing at Beatrice as though asking her to translate something, he began to speak in Italian. Judging by his tone, it sounded like something serious. Ensign Angelo has something very important to say, so he wants to talk with your commanding officer. He seeks assistance with something. I don't know what. Something important? Got it. I'll go find Lieutenant Yamamoto. Lieutenant Yamamoto, there we go. Ensign Angelo had two of his subordinates with him, and wore a stern expression on his face. They didn't have to say anything for us to realize that this must be something very serious. That's it. Lift it up. The winch creaked, and the thick chains rang out with a dull clang. Very, very slowly, it was lifted up out of the submarine's cargo hold. Now I get it. So this is why those Italians didn't want us near their sub. The lieutenant and the others looked up at what the winch was slowly lifting up. All of them wearing unpleasant, forced smiles. Unbelievable. So this is what Papa brought all this way. Incredible. I've never seen anything like this. It was a mountain of gold ingots. Those carefully piled bars were being slowly lifted out of the cargo hold, one group after another. This gold had been their true cargo. I don't know where they were planning to take it. They might have been trying to sneak it into Japan, one of their allies. Or they might have been on their way to hide it in some remote area. Was it some sort of strategy? A conspiracy? Embezzlement? Top secret transportation of wealth? This incomprehensible amount of gold led to all sorts of dark suspicions, but we didn't know anything about the truth. All told, the gold weighed an incredible 10 tons. That was the only truth we could wrap our minds around at the moment. They had strongly resisted showing this to us. However, the submarine could no longer make sea, and it was apparently continuing to take in water bit by bit. Rokanjima had been outfitted in an extremely slipshod way, so we had no means of repairing it. Also, while we could unload the sub, there was no way we could lift it up again once it had filled with water and sunk to the bottom. It was clear that, unless action was taken, the gold would soon become completely impossible to transport. And so, they had made the decision to unload it. Of course, they made no effort to explain the reason for all this gold. They just asked us to help them take it out. Why would they take so much gold out of the country? Couldn't they have changed the course of the war with this much wealth? Weapons change the course of war, but after the war, they aren't useful for anything. Money may also change the course, but it remains just as valuable after the war. There was no longer any way to change the course of this war. The Axis powers would probably all surrender, leading to an Allied victory. Anyone could tell this simply by looking at the American planes flying across the sky day after day. However, gold would still be valuable after the war was over. Everyone stared upwards, dumbfounded, as the winch slowly lifted the dully sparkling gold. Well. That's one mystery solved. But it, opens the doors to a bunch of new mysteries. Lieutenant Yamamoto. The Italians don't want us to tell the mainland about this gold. Aha. So, they don't want our country to take possession of it. What did he say? He's saying your group probably doesn't want it reported because you fear that Japan will take possession of the gold. Ensign Angelo is actually more afraid of Italy itself finding out. To us, our homeland's current government is a mere puppet set up by the Allied forces. If they find out, the gold will be returned to them. However, that would be the same as handing the gold over to our enemies. They had come all this way to make sure that the gold didn't fall into enemy hands. They needed to hide this gold from the puppet government until their homeland could be truly restored. Ushiromiya, make a proposal to the Italians. Tell them that we wish to offer our assistance. What sort of assistance? I understand what the Italians are trying to say. They want that gold to be hidden so that their homeland doesn't find out about it. However, they would need to obtain at least a transport ship if they plan to take it from this island. If they tried that, however, the mainland would hear about it, which means that the Italian government would too. That's right. In other words, there's no longer any way to take that gold off Rokkenjima. Their mission must have been to hide that gold in absolute secrecy until the day of their homeland's restoration. Later on, several plausible rumors would circulate about how Germany also moved much of its secret wealth to certain hidden areas in South America just prior to its surrender. It was a very natural conclusion to reach. That submarine was their only method of transporting the gold in secrecy, and it's become completely useless. They can't fully stop the water from seeping in, and it'll probably sink completely before much longer. There's no longer any way for them to transport the gold in secrecy. In other words, their mission has ended in failure here in the Far East. So, just how is Lieutenant Yamamoto proposing that we assist them? The Rokkenjima base is top secret, and no one knows about it. The islanders in the surrounding area believe this island to be ill-omened and deserted, so they never come near it. Do you get my meaning, Ushiromiya? What did he say? As we told you earlier, no one knows about this base. And as you can see, it's of no use strategically, so the higher-ups have already forgotten about it. Sounds like Lieutenant Yamamoto is suggesting that you hide the gold on this island. Beatrice quickly translated this and told Ensign Angelo. The ensign began discussing rapidly with his subordinates. They didn't look happy. Japan may have been their ally, but they probably didn't want the gold for reconstructing their motherland to be entrusted to Asians. Still, it's hard to imagine any other option for them. It's a fierce debate. Some say that there's no other option, while others think that we should remain loyal to our homeland, no matter the cost. Ensign Angelo is stuck between a rock and a hard place. Hiding this gold was the final order given to them by their fallen homeland. However, by now, there was no way for that order to be carried out successfully. If the mainland or their own homeland found out, the gold would probably be confiscated by the wrong people from their point of view. If they really wanted to carry out their homeland's orders faithfully, Lieutenant Yamamoto's proposal was extremely reasonable. Though the lieutenant couldn't understand their words, it seemed he realized how divided they were. If we help out, we'll be able to hide the gold in utmost secrecy. Fortunately, there's an abandoned tunnel that stretches all the way across this island. He's saying that if you hide the gold underground and bury it on this island, no one will be able to find it. Our side is saying that it sounds like a realistic proposal. However, there seems to be some resistance against accepting Japanese assistance. It seems they're having difficulty coming to a decision. Do you really have a choice, Italians? You don't think you can hide that gold without our help, can you? Do you, even? And I doubt you want to leave it lying around on the beach for much longer. Ensign Angelo wants to minimize the number of people who know about the gold. He doesn't trust the Japanese, but it looks like he's decided that Lieutenant Yamamoto's plan is the best possible option. But he seems suspicious. About what? He's wondering whether they really intend to move a full 10 tons of gold and swear themselves to secrecy without any sort of compensation. 50-50. Sir, you can't be. Hand over half of the gold to us. With that as our work wages, we'll hide the other half nice and safe for them. He's telling you to give us half of it. The instant Beatrice translated that sentence, Ensign Angelo slammed his hands on the desk and stood up. Instead of flinching, Lieutenant Yamamoto, true to his boasts of once being a thug that everyone feared, actually looked even more relaxed and confident than he had previously. After all, they really don't have the option of refusing. I could demand 80% if I wanted. I've lowered that to an even split as a sign of good faith. Of course, we aren't the only ones with leverage here. If the Italians decide to leak this to the outside, all of the gold will probably be taken by Japan or Italy. We won't get even a single yen out of it. This can only work if we're both partners in crime here. He's saying we should all be partners in the crime of embezzlement. By now, he's already moved on to speaking as an individual, not as a soldier. Insane. So, he's been blinded by greed. Lieutenant Yamamoto was grinning. It really did look as though he had been blinded by greed, just as Beatrice said. If they leave it just piled up where it is, you can be sure that it'll be noticed when the boat comes for them from the mainland. If that happens, none of us will profit. They ought to accept our proposal and hide the gold as soon as possible. It sounds like Ensign Angelo is dead set on the Japanese and Italian governments not finding out about this. He wants to carry out his duty until the end. So, what exactly does that mean? He wants the gold buried deep within the island, even if he has to pay some percentage to buy our silence. Of course, some of his subordinates object strongly. They're saying that 50% is out of the question. Yoshiramiya, how is it going over? They also don't want any more people laying eyes on the gold. However, they seem to object to the portions. Ensign Angelo says that they'll consider 10%, though he's also saying that he's fairly sure Lieutenant Yamamoto won't accept that. Yoshiramiya, what is the Italians' answer? They'll consider handing over 10%. This time, it was Lieutenant Yamamoto who slammed down on the desk. But the Italians didn't flinch either. An incredible tension filled the small room. However, despite his violent outburst a second ago, Lieutenant Yamamoto's expression still looked smug and in control. He was probably confident that he now had the initiative. 10%? Now there's a modest proposal. Very well, I'll give up 10%. 40-60. Tell them I won't go any further than that. 40% for the Japanese, 60 for the Italians. The lieutenant made it sound like he was willing to stand firm on that, but in truth, these negotiations were not being made on equal footing. If the Italians just wanted the gold for themselves, there wouldn't be much of a problem. But what if? What if they really were true patriots and decided that they ought to return the gold, even to the defeated puppet government of their homeland, for the purpose of reconstruction? If so, They would probably report the existence of the gold to the Italian embassy. Eventually, the Italian government would petition the Allied nations for the retrieval of the gold. It probably wouldn't all make it back to Italy, but it might be used effectively to repair and rebuild the battered towns. If that happened, Lieutenant Yamamoto and his friends would only be able to sneak out a few ingots at most. He was greedily planning to make this his own treasure island, so that he and his subordinates could have an enormous fortune all to themselves. If he wanted those ambitions to bear out, the Italians would have to conceal the presence of the gold. But there's one thing I don't get. If Ensign Angelo doesn't want to let anyone have the gold, he could have just let the submarine sink. Why did he have it unloaded? I'd rather not think about it, but Ensign Angelo might have started planning to embezzle the gold as soon as he found out that their mission would be impossible to complete. Right now, he's asking his subordinates for their opinions, both as soldiers and as individuals with families waiting for them back home. The more straight-laced soldiers are furious. The discussion between the Italians was becoming fierce and emotional. Though their homeland had fallen, they had come all this way in accordance with its orders. They had probably been given this mission because they were particularly faithful and duty-minded troops. It seemed they couldn't just agree to a foreigner's proposal to embezzle and split up the gold. Ensign Angelo looked like he was doing all he could to calm the unexpectedly fervent rage of his subordinates. Looks like the gold is blinding them too. It seems no one can sort out their own personal feelings and the way they want to be perceived. How's their answer coming? Ushiromiya! Bichi. Lieutenant Yamamoto is asking for an answer. They're saying they want some time to think. I had you to talk to so I could let off some tension, but that wasn't true for the rest of them. They lost a lot of comrades at the end of a very long journey, and now they're here in a tight spot. They've even lost their mission, the one thing they could depend upon to guide them. They don't know what to do. Sir, they say they'd like some time. Sure, let them talk it over all they want. But there isn't much time. If we're going to hide it, that'll take time and effort. Make your decision before noon tomorrow. That's all, Italians. He's giving you until noon tomorrow. That bastard, it's like he's trying to threaten you. Ensign Angelo is saying he'll ask everyone's opinions. How does it look? It'll probably be tough going. It seems the ensign is willing to consider splitting it, but his subordinates and the others will probably oppose that. All of them have lost close friends on their voyage to the Far East. They're firm in their desire to do their duty for our homeland. Will they refuse the lieutenant's proposal? Even if they do, the gold will just fall into someone else's hands. If nothing is going to be left anyway, Ensign Angelo suggests that they each sneak at least one ingot back with them. And some of the others seem to agree, but men always get carried away at times like this. Even I can't guess what they'll do. I imagine the Italians had some complicated feelings about all this. In their eyes, Italy after the surrender was probably like an enemy country. Letting the gold go back to that Italy would erase the meaning of their entire voyage. However, embezzling and splitting the gold would also erase the meaning of their journey. The country they felt obligated to serve had already fallen. That alone destroyed the significance of their journey. Not a happy story for them.
If it's bound to be meaningless anyway, wouldn't keeping hold of even just a few ingots be better than nothing?
Sure, if you want to calculate straight up profit and loss. But men aren't like that. The Italians were gathered in a cramped room, arguing fiercely.
I don't like it. We must remain true to our soldier spirit until the end. For the sake of our fallen comrades.
And how do you define remaining true?
By hiding the gold on this island? By accepting the proposal of those Asians?
We can't trust them. Especially that Yamamoto person. We must not let our guards down.
Unloading the gold and letting the Japanese see it was a huge mistake. We should have let it sink with a sub. Oh, wonderful idea. Let's just sink it right inside a Japanese base. It would have been pulled up eventually. That wouldn't hide anything.
There's no way to get the gold off this island without anyone knowing, in any case.
If we had just taken the honorable path and scuttled the sub, none of this would have happened.
If we had known back then that the sub was already broken beyond repair.
Why did you ask the Japanese military for help, Ensign? How are you planning to carry out the mission if they found out about the gold?
Our mission was a failure from the moment you asked them for help. All of us have families waiting for us back home. And we've more than done our part, I'd say, voyaging all the way to this island country in the Far East. You could call this a fair and just payment for our services. Chatter, chatter. Chatter, chatter, chatter. Ensign Angelo. If the Japanese prove to be less than amicable, we need to be prepared to take extreme measures. And what do you mean by extreme measures, Corporal? Someone gulped. A stiff tension hung over the room. The Japanese here are pushovers. They're all cowards with no battle experience. And we are elites. We know the layout of almost the entire base, along with a number of Japanese troops and how they are arranged. If Ensign Angelo gives the order, we should be able to subdue them quickly. Only a few of them, Yamamoto included, look like fighters. The rest are just laborers attached to the military. It may look like they have the advantage of numbers, but we have the greater military force.
If we kill the Japanese, how are we going to explain it when the boat comes for us? You really think that'll work?
There should be plenty of ways as long as the corpses aren't found. Ensign Angelo. It will be easy to subdue this base. If we kill Yamamoto and the few strong fighters, the laborers will probably surrender easily.
Let's have them carry the gold and bury it. Of course, we'll have to silence them afterwards.
Are you suggesting we massacre all of them?
Let's do it. If we kill them all, no one will have to know about the gold.
At that moment, the door, which had supposedly been locked, opened slightly, and a metal object was thrown in. Granata! Grenade. As the yell rang out, the table was kicked over to be used as a shield, and they all dropped to the floor. However, in this cramped room, it probably wouldn't do them any good. The Italians were all prepared for death.
A dud! It's a dud!
Fortunately, the shoddy grenade was a dud. The door was slammed open, and 3 Japanese soldiers wielding pistols jumped in.
Damn it! It's a dud! Kill the Italians! Kill the Italians! Return fire! Fire at will!
In this small room, no matter who shot where, it was bound to hit someone. The exchange of bullets instantly caused a rain of blood, with casualties on both sides. The three who had jumped in were covered with bullet holes and fell over, moaning and thrashing. Gino! Damn, they got his lung. We can't save him. We should consider ourselves lucky. If that grenade had gone off, we'd all be dead. The grenade was still rolling around on the floor. It had been a surprise attack. Lieutenant Yamamoto had probably judged that the negotiations would not go his way, and had decided to make the first move. Or else, maybe had been planning from the beginning to put them in the position of having to take a vote, in order to gather them all in one place. Rokkanjima belonged to the Japanese. If they killed all of the Italians, then on half, but all of the gold would go to them. There was still a chance that the grenade might go off late. The Italians rushed out into the corridor. They heard gunfire from down the hallway. It was coming from the direction of the submarine dock. Clearly, the troops guarding the pile of gold were being attacked. Ensign Angelo, what are your orders? We have no choice. Kill the Japanese. Lieutenant, these guys are good. Those Italians aren't your ordinary soldiers. Sailors, not soldiers. I see. They needed men good enough to guard that gold. We have the numbers. Keep your cool. Surround them and kill them. Let's hunt some Italians. As soon as I heard the sound of repeated gunfire, I knew that whatever it was that had been smoldering since the time the gold was unloaded had finally burst into flame. The eyes of our soldiers when looking at the gold had not been normal. Yes, those eyes had been entranced by demons. The Italians had also been at breaking point due to the heavy burden they bore. Who wouldn't have snapped after becoming trapped in a distant land where you can't understand the language or the writing? Thinking I had to do something, I ran towards the sound of gunfire. Looking back on it, that was an extremely foolish thing to do. That sound meant that there were people shooting at each other, people killing each other. And yet, unarmed as I was, I dashed toward the sound, as though I was trying to mediate some schoolyard fight. It didn't take long before I learned how foolish and naive such a thing was in the heat of battle. Hiraoka! Warrant Officer Hiraoka was lying face down, his entire body drenched in blood. Judging by the trail of blood behind him, it was clear that he had somehow managed to crawl here from a different room before dying. No, he was still twitching. He might not be dead yet. But on this island without a doctor, no, even if we had a doctor, how could anyone possibly save a man who had been shot this many times in the chest? When I looked into the room he must have crawled out of, I saw two more blood-stained Japanese corpses. I fell backwards pathetically on my butt, my mouth hanging open in shock. Come to think of it, that was the first time I had ever faced death in my life. The entire world was at war, even though millions were dying both east and west. This was the first time I met with a person's death directly. Ridiculous. Didn't I join the army hoping to die? Didn't I whine about not being sent to the front lines? Yeah, so, rejoice, Kinzo. Isn't this the death you were looking for? Why not spread your hands and yell out loud? Come for me, magnificent death! Someone came running towards me. It was a colleague of mine, a Japanese man. Tajima-kun. Run! He dashed towards me, pale-faced and out of breath. His face seemed horribly contorted with terror. Mine probably looked the same. Tajima-kun, what happened? Run away. We'll all be killed. Someone yelled in Italian, and at the same time, Tajima-kun let out a scream. Then, he grabbed onto me as he fell to the floor. A red stain was spreading across his back before my eyes. Tajima-kun. As he spat bubbles of blood, he said that one word and died. But the shocking event of seeing someone die right in front of me did not capture my attention. No living thing is concerned with the deaths of others at a fundamental level. The one thing that matters is whether they themselves die or not. My attention was fully occupied by the barrel of the gun the Italian soldier was pointing. Tajima-kun's back burst once more as he leaned against me. Flesh tore, blood splattered. The warm splash of it covered my face. Was the Italian still trying to finish him off even though he had stopped moving for good? How foolish I've been. Can I still not understand the scene in front of me? Rejoice, Kinzo. Now you'll finally get what you've wanted all this time. The Italian hadn't fired to finish off Tajima-kun. He had been aiming at the man Tajima-kun had fallen on, me, Ushiro-mie Kinzo. I pushed his corpse aside, scrabbled against the floor, and dashed away, tumbling over myself. My hands had pushed off against the floor hard enough to tear off the ring fingernail on my left hand. When faced with death, humans truly can resist with all they've got. I tumbled over and over as I ran, scraping up parts of my body. It was painful, hot, but that didn't matter at all. I heard the yelling in Italian coming from behind me over and over again. It felt like they were running, chasing after me. I didn't want to look back, so I kept on running and running, as though the Italians were right behind me. This is death. Didn't you want to die? No, I don't want to die. Why? Didn't I want to die so badly? But now, I know. I know how wonderful it is to be alive. She taught me. Michi did. I can only be free when I talk with her. No. By talking with her, I was finally alive for the first time. I was finally born. I want to live. I want to live, I want to live, I want to live. I don't want to die. I want to live and see her right now. If I don't see her, I'll die. I'll be killed. Stay cool, Kinzo. She might be killed too. If you live and she dies, you might as well be dead. Before I knew it, my face was covered in tears, snot, and drool. When I stumbled over something and fell, I was finally able to come to my senses a little. I could still hear intermittent gunfire. The gunfight was still going on, and it had spread throughout the entire base.
Beatrice, are you okay? I'll find her. Take her to a safe place. The lieutenant will probably kill all of the Italians to steal the gold. Beatrice probably won't be an exception. Beatrice. Beatrice! Meeting you was the first time I ever lived. The first time I was ever born. So if you die, I'll die again. I could feel every cell in my body being reborn. Not as Ushiromiya Kinzo, but as a completely different Kinzo. Of course, I was terrified that I might really be shot if I went back. But I no longer wanted to die, in the truest possible sense. So I was able to overcome my fear. Beatrice! Rubens! What on earth is going on? What is all of this?
There's no need for you to know. Just stay hidden there. Don't come out until one of your fellow countrymen calls for you.
I heard an Italian voice. He's over there. Goddamn Asians.
Rubens stood with Beatrice behind his back and neatly shot the two men rushing at him with two 9mm bullets from his Beretta M1934. However, one of the 8mm bullets from their Type 94 semi-auto pistols went straight into Rubens' chest. All three of the shooters were struck in the chest and fell down in a heap.
No! Rubens! Go up to the surface. Hide in the forest. Rubens!
My, aren't we chatty? I knew it. I knew it was him. The next person to appear was the commanding officer of the Japanese soldiers, Yamamoto. The blast of 3 guns had just sounded, adding on Beatrice's screams. It was hardly surprising that he had noticed the encounter. If it had to come to this anyway, we should have taken this woman as a hostage in the first place. Damn annoying, that's what they are. Yamamoto spat. Beatrice used that moment to snatch up Rubens' gun.
Ah!
Oh, picking up a gun without hesitation.
Italian women sure are scary. Damn it, you both managed to screw up.
He spat this last part at the two dying men who lay moaning at his feet. However, it wasn't particularly surprising. This wasn't the only place it was happening. Nearly everyone met head-on in these tiny, cramped tunnels. When both sides shot recklessly in a situation like that, the result was 2 corpses. So, the way to be fastest was to pull the trigger immediately the moment you sense another person. That was the only way to make it through this battle without ending up with a bullet in your chest. Because of this, both Japanese and Italians killed each other without hesitation, and they sometimes even pulled the trigger on their own countrymen when they unexpectedly ran into each other. And in the midst of this, large numbers of Japanese men who had no idea what was going on ran towards the noise and became victims, one after another. It didn't matter whether the other person was holding a gun or not. Everyone reflexively pulled the trigger at the sight of anyone other than themselves trying to stay alive. The slaughter engulfed the entire base. There was a fierce gun battle taking place in the submarine dock, and a massacre resembling a hunt was taking place inside the base. Most of the non-combatants assigned to this base were killed before they knew what was going on. The Italians were indeed quite seasoned troops, but their numbers began to drop bit by bit. Blood-stained corpses lay scattered all across the base. At first, it had probably been a proper gunfight. However, as they gradually became desensitized, it devolved into that most basic cause of wars throughout humanity: the desire to kill all foreigners you don't understand. Whenever they heard words they didn't understand, they pulled the trigger. By that point, the screams of foreigners sounded no different from those of man-shaped beasts. After all, they couldn't understand pleading in another language. So it had long ago turned into a mere massacre. As the number of dead surpassed the number of living, silence began to return to the base. Just when it felt as though everyone had died, the desolate sound of the wind blew through the caves. There would be a sudden scream, the crisp sound of a gun, and one would remember that the massacre still wasn't over. This happened over and over again, until eventually true silence fell. It marked the pitiful end of those led astray by gold. The leader of the Italian soldiers, Angelo, had managed to survive somehow. He encountered nothing but the corpses of friend and foe. All was quiet once more in the base. If he was careless enough to call out, he might be shot from the shadows somewhere. So he snuck about like a panther, breathing quietly and searching for the remaining enemies. There was no sign or trace of any living person. Maybe all of the people in this base had died. Damn Japanese. The Japanese struck first, but at that time, we were also talking about killing them. They simply made the first move as military men. So, perhaps I should be grateful for today. Even if the boat had come to take us away, there would have been no honor for us. We would have been mere failures in our mission, unfit to face our dead comrades. Perhaps dying here in the Far East alongside my gun is a more fitting end for a soldier. From around the corner, I noticed the sound of a leg being dragged along the ground, and I strained to hear. Is someone seriously wounded and shuffling with a limp? Noticing them before they noticed me greatly helps my chances. At this stage, there's no point in taking prisoners. We must dispose of all the Japanese. I'll dash around the corner, quickly check to see who they are, and shoot if it's a Japanese person. Nothing more. I've been hiding my footsteps the whole time. They probably don't know I'm here. Once the shuffling footsteps had come close enough, Angelo leaned around the corner and raised his gun. The voice that reached him spoke Italian. Run! You! I've been looking for you, Ensign Angelo. That makes all of you. I've been counting Italian corpses, you see. No, don't die! Ensign Angelo! Blood poured from Angelo's chest. His gun fell to the floor, then his knees, and then the rest of his body crumpled and stopped moving. Yamamoto's accuracy with the gun wasn't particularly stellar. However, Angelo had waited until they were fairly close before jumping out, so Yamamoto had been able to hit his target. And he had managed it with a short-barreled handgun in one hand and a woman as a hostage in the other.
Really though, our Rokenjima garrison was pathetic. Am I the only one who's not dead? Trash, all of them. Can't you fight without using a woman as a shield, you brute? Let go. Quiet. Noisy, these Italian girls. If you'd just be cooperative, I'd at least spare your life.
It was such an obvious lie that even he wore a bitter smile.
The Italians were spies working for the enemy, and they all died along with the garrison in a gunfight.
That was the story Yamamoto wanted to tell, and so he couldn't afford to have any Italian survivors. At this point, he wouldn't be able to keep the entire pile of gold, but he could at least grab as many ingots as he could carry. Even that would be worth a huge amount of money. Beatrice suddenly swung her head, smashing Yamamoto's nose hard.
Someone! Help! Someone! Ah! You bitch.
She almost managed to escape. However, Yamamoto quickly grabbed her leg and tripped her. She fell onto her back, and Yamamoto mercilessly stomped his foot down on her stomach and pointed his gun at her.
I don't make a hobby of taming tomboys. Die!
Lieutenant Yamamoto! She had nothing to do with this! Let go of her! Kinzo had jumped out from the shadows. He was holding a gun he had stolen from one of the corpses.
Ushiromiya. Ah, so you're alive. Let her go. You're hurting her. It was you, wasn't it? You tipped the Italians off. What are you talking about?
Yamamoto didn't know that the grenade had been a dud. The surprise attack, which he had been certain would work, had failed, so he had decided that Kinzo must have tipped them off.
It's your fault the surprise attack failed, and now look what's happened. You turncoat. I know you've been working with him through this woman. Can't you see that you caused all this because you were blinded by gold? Run, Kinzo. This man has shot people begging for their lives. He'll shoot you too. Don't talk, Italian. If you open your mouth again, I won't hesitate to shoot. It hurts. Ugh.
Yamamoto ground his heel into Beatrice's gut.
Stop it. Stop it! She had nothing to do with this. Oh? Are you pointing a gun at a superior officer? Stop and think of it, fool. If we agree to keep the same story, we can have that pile of gold all to ourselves, right? I could only grab a few for myself, but if we work together, we could stake off with even more. I don't mean this as your superior officer. Let's split it between us as men.
Haven't you already killed the last people you said you'd split the gold with?
Ushiromiya. Looks like you prefer lead to gold.
Without any hesitation, Yamamoto raised the barrel of his gun towards Kinzo and pulled the trigger. It grazed Kinzo's right ear. Yamamoto's aim had been just a bit better. The bullet would undoubtedly have slammed into Kinzo's face.
Kinzo? How could you... You...
Not letting Yamamoto's momentary distraction go to waste, Beatrice lashed out and planted her right foot in Yamamoto's crotch. After moaning in pain, a demonic expression flashed across Yamamoto's face, and he stomped on her chest.
Beat it! You bitch. Die.
Beatrice shut her eyes tightly, hoping that she could withstand the coming pain. No one would want to have their eyes open at the moment they were shot.
You...
Thick spurts of blood squirted out of Yamamoto's chest. Just as you took many lives for your own sake, I take your life. For mine. Was Yamamoto able to hear the last of Kinzo's words to him? In his last moments, Yamamoto seemed to grin. Then slowly, he fell over backwards, a river of blood trailing from his body.
Kinzo, are you okay? I was sure you'd been shot.
Beatrice tried to stand up, but then doubled over and started coughing.
Beach, are you hurt?
My ribs are hurting. That brute really was stomping them hard. Will you be alright? I hope they aren't broken. Italian women don't break so easily, but thanks. I owe you my life. If you hadn't come, all of it ended there. Yamamoto had shown no mercy. Her ribs were probably cracked. We didn't have the option of waiting, possibly for several days, for the ship that was coming. I made the decision to ferry her off this island. The man who kept yelling about preserving the secrecy of the base is lying there dead. The next island over, Nijima, is close. A small boat should be able to take us there. I need to take you to a hospital. The wound might be more serious than you realize. That's interesting. Never knew there was a hospital on this island. There isn't. I'll use a boat to take you to the next island. I'll take you to a hospital. But I need to return here and clean up the mess on this island, or it'll mean a court-martial. I have a request. Please, don't take me to a hospital. Why? If we go to a hospital and the embassy is contacted, I'll eventually be sent back to Italy. If that happens, I'll be interrogated about all kinds of things. I won't acknowledge those people who let Mama die. There's no homeland for me to return to now. This is the end for me. So, there's nowhere I want to go anymore. The people who were so kind to me, Vincent Angelo, Rubens, and everyone else, are all dead. And because of that, you want to die here too? I thought you said Italian women weren't weak. Live. Hey, Kinzo? What does it mean to live? You're the one who taught me, aren't you? Living is more than just breathing. I don't want to go back to Italy. Beatrice, you said that you were dead before you met me. But it's the same for me. I died in that submarine. My homeland fell. Mama died. Even Papa died. I prayed that our sub would just sink to the bottom of the ocean. So when we reached this place, I was actually disappointed that we'd survived. And then
right after that, Ensign Angelo started asking whether anyone could speak English. When Kinzo met Beatrice, he finally forgot about dying. When Beatrice met Kinzo, she also forgot about dying. Now that I've lost my homeland, my family, and my friends, I wish you would whisk me away. Beat you. But I know that's a wish that couldn't come true, so at the very least, I want to be with you until the boat comes for us. I don't care about the pain in my chest. After all, when the boat comes and takes me away, I'll die. Beatrice spoke this, smiling softly. She did her best to hide the pain in her chest. Please, Kinzo. Just for the few days until the boat comes, steal me away. That's a wish I cannot grant. Looking apologetic, Kinzo lifted Beato up and gently sat her in the boat. I think they mean Beachy here, because, you know, it's different Beatrice. Coward. So, Japanese men are weak after all. You're right. I am a coward. So I can only grant you half of your wish. With a clunk, he placed the object wrapped in a jacket into the boat. What do you mean? The part about until the boat comes for you. I can't make that a reality. Huh? What do you mean? Stealing you away. That wish I will make come true. Kinzo? There has to be a doctor on Nijima. I'm wearing a Navy uniform. I should be able to pass myself off as a survivor of a boat carrying a VIP that was sunk by enemy ships. If the doctor happens to be of the greedy sort, all the better. After all, I have right here the golden magic to make people do what I say. She came from a distant country, took my lifeless body, and gave me a soul. The witch, who came bearing gold, revived me with her magic. You are a witch. The Golden Witch. Yes, the Golden Witch. Even though I use the same recipe as everyone else, only my alchemy can turn pasta into a smoking black heap. Just like you, I'm nothing but a corpse that's only allowed to live while you're there beside me. If you disappear, I'll die within moments. I won't let you die. Really. No matter what. Take some responsibility. After all, you're the one who spirited me away. I see. So, Kinzo-san told you that much. Then, wait. It was you? You're the Nijima doctor that grandfather took Beatrice to. Why so shocked? You should have leapt to mine at the moment the words Nijima doctor showed up. All of a sudden, A soldier of the Navy appeared along with a foreign woman. Of course, I was astounded. What's more, he told me to treat her wounds confidentially, since their presence was a military secret.
Was that the first time you met grandfather?
Yes, that was when we first met.
So, you're the greedy doctor who followed orders for the sake of gold.
That's a bit harsh. He suddenly brought in a foreign woman patient, told me it was a military secret, promised that he'd pay the medical fees later, and handed me a gold ingot as collateral. I didn't want to get involved with any funny business. I was reluctant to say the least.
I see your point. But in the end, you did conceal Beatrice, didn't you?
I may not be as skilled as Kinzo-san, but I do have some familiarity with English. I managed to overhear part of their conversation, and that was enough to convince me that they were not troublesome people. Of course, if I were to say that the ingot didn't tempt me, that would be a lie. I was much younger than you see.
What happened to her next?
I treated her for some time before someone came to me on behalf of the Ushinomiya family and said that she would be moved to Auaurora. They took her away.
So, grandfather didn't come to get her himself?
Regardless of how Kinzo explained away the incident on Rokkenjima, he probably wouldn't have been able to move about freely for some time afterwards. Precisely. Kinzo-san has said that deceiving the military was the greatest challenge of his life.
So, Beatrice went to Auaurora, and then what?
I've heard that she hid in one of their unused villas. After all, Kinzo-san already had a family at that time. It must have been tricky to manage.
So, Kinzo was a master of the double life before Kuadorian even existed.
Whoosh.
Whoosh? What are you doing? Is your butt itching? Oh, he like stepped aside. I get it. That should have been a sound effect, another like him literally saying the word whoosh. And I think you thought the boat captain would take Kinzo to see Nanjo, but I think the boat captain didn't start ferrying until after Kinzo started building on the island. Or perhaps even after that, like when the family moved in. And later on, Beatrice and grandfather continued their happy relationship in the villa from then on.
I've heard that it was a modest, peaceful life. Several years later, they had a child.
And so, Kuadorian's Beatrice was born. I mean, Nanjo probably knows a lot of people who have boats. He lives on an island. It wouldn't surprise me if he knows the boat captain. Kawabata, I believe. What's his name?
The birth didn't go well. Truly a sad tale.
You don't mean she died?
Don't be surprised. Kinzo believed his daughter was Beatrice reborn. Don't ignore the heart. It's possible to reason it out.
You're right. My apologies.
I don't know how many years Kinzo-san spent with her in Auaurora. However, judging by Kinzo-san as we know him afterwards,
even if it was only a few years. One can tell how deeply he loved her.
I see.
So then, he made Kouadorian for his daughter. Kinzo-san cleverly made use of the submarine's gold to build up a fortune in a flash. Then, he made use of his considerable skills in English to make connections with the GHQ, becoming immensely wealthy in a short span of time. I'm sure there's no need to explain this part to you, Leon-san.
Yes. He used that vast wealth, bought Rokajima, and built the mansion. The remaining relatives in Auaurora scoffed at grandfather, thinking he was crazy to buy an entire deserted island.
If you could carry 10 tons of gold around in your pocket, Kinzo probably wouldn't have bought Rokajima. He hid the gold somewhere in the Rokajima, built up a fortune with the ingots he'd taken out of it, and then bought up the whole treasure island. Exactly. And that started the legend of the Ushiromiya gold. What about the mark of the one-winged eagle that was supposedly pressed into the ingots?
It was less a one-winged eagle than an eagle that appeared to have only one wing. What do you mean?
You see it often in Europe, do you not? A crest or coat of arms with an eagle spreading its wings on it. The flag of the Selo Republic also had an eagle, or was it a hawk, emblazoned on it. So, the imprint was made too lightly, or else it was poorly done. Unlike in the picture, because that's like crisp as fuck. I find it very amusing that they explain that while the image clearly shows that it's different from the text. Yeah, it's definitely not intentional. Correct. It was a hasty, wartime stamping. It was probably supposed to look like the crest of an eagle spreading its wings, but half of it, cut off at a diagonal, was too faded to see.
So, half of the eagle spreading its wings disappeared, making it look like a one-winged eagle.
Kinzo thought the seal on the gold of Beatrice. The woman who had changed his fate looked like a one-winged eagle. That must be why he decided to make that his own crest. If the imprint had been made correctly, it would have been the eagle of the Salo Republic's flag. Or it could have been the two-headed. Or could it have been the two-headed? No, that would be ridiculous. At any rate, passing the night away with Kinzo-san in front of that massive pile of gold, drinking and dreaming, was truly an enjoyable experience. However, Kinzo-san didn't want anyone using that stamp to figure out where the gold had come from. The gold he took outside was all repressed with the one-winged eagle design he had created, explaining the image. I forgot about that. And all he did was show you the gold. What a cheapskate. Of course, after he became immensely rich, Kinzo-san came to me once more and paid me in full for the overdue medical expenses. The amount he came with was a bit much for medical fees, though I did make sure to give him his change.
You've been friends ever since?
Yes. Kinzo-san was extremely grateful to me for keeping his secret and concealing Beatrice.
Grandfather always says that the old relatives in Auaurora were a bunch of greedy liars. I'm sure he appreciated your strong sense of duty, Dr. Nanjo. I think I understand why a person like grandfather came to trust you.
I also had some interest in foreign countries, as well as a hobby of playing chess. Kinzo-san and I have gotten along well ever since. It was a friendship that built up gradually, but grew strong before we knew it. Yes, we have been friends a very long time. People who deal with large amounts of money are quite mindful of small amounts as well. When you refuse to accept anything more than the medical fees, that must have earned you his admiration. You think too highly of me. No, I was just frightened by the large amount of money. I began to regret it later. It seems I've never had real guts. No need to worry there. Guts are one thing you've got no shortage of. You think so? Well, I appreciate the flattery. That wasn't flattery. After Kinzo dies, Nanjo is complicit in keeping his death a secret for at least a whole year. Of course, Natsuhi must have given him a fairly hefty sum of hush money. All the same, he's at least gutsy enough to withstand the pressure from Kinzo's children for that amount of time without slipping up once. You're plenty gutsy if you ask me. That sense of duty must be part of your character. Perhaps that is my only redeeming quality.
I think grandfather was blessed with a good friend.
Well, I think that's a good place to call it for the night. I think. Because as you might be able to tell, my voice is slowly dying. And I would like to not have it die completely. That would be nice. But yes, wow. What an episode. We now know where the gold comes from. We know how Kinzo met the original Beatrice, Biche. We know who that is. We know where Kuadorian Beatrice comes from. Wild. We even know how, like, part of why all that was concealed. You think it explains the epitaph? Hell yeah. I don't know, it's good stuff. I don't know. There's a couple of lines that make sense now. Yeah, maybe, probably. Yeah, this is a huge episode. It's not we're not quite done with digging into Kinzo's past yet. As you can see from the title of the upcoming chapter that we're gonna dive into next week. And there's some like small minor things that we learn as well, like Kinzo, even as a younger person, before he even met Beatrice, likes roses, Western books, other cultures, you know, really good at English, and oh my god, is he dramatic. You can really see sort of the roots of who he turns into later, right? Like even when, you know, him and Beatrice go through everything and he's already like, oh, demons and magic, and he really, and even earlier he's like, oh, I'm cursed, and there's a different sort of, because he gets compared to Balor a lot, right? and vice versa. But there's a really like, dramatic flair to how he talks, like his inner monologue, which I think is really interesting. He's also like a little uptight, I guess, compared to Battler, which makes sense considering his upbringing and all that. But I feel like this entire flashback really explains a lot about why he became the way he is now. But not just from the events that happened, but also from kind of setting up what kind of personality he has before all this. And it's really subtle, but it's definitely like, yeah, no, it makes sense. I get why he turns out like this. And why he becomes such an asshole. Because he does, yeah. You can't deny that. He's a jerk. He sucks. But I get why. I get why he sucks. Anyway. on that note, we're gonna find out more about what all this led to, what happens after this next week. I'm looking forward to it, as always. Yeah, you just, you know, she dies and he goes crazy. That's what I'm expecting after all this, at least. But yeah, I think the most interesting part from all this, there's a lot of interesting stuff here, but for me, one of the more interesting things is that he's already got a penchant for referring to things in like an occult way. I think that was always there. So every time the family's like, oh, he went completely nuts with his occultism and stuff. I think that was a much slower transition than they all make it out to be. But they do use that as a way to cover up that he's dead, don't they? Like, he's locked himself up in his study, going like crazy with his occult stuff. But he hasn't, because he's not alive anymore. Explains a lot, doesn't it? Alright, well. I'm gonna be back on Monday with more Mythic Ocean. I'm hoping to wrap up the game this time for realsies. Then back the Wednesday after that, next week. And then we're gonna continue where we left off with Umineko. And gonna try to have the YouTube VOD up real quick, as usual. And yeah. Let me just grab the end screen. Turn off this game. Grab some music, get that going. What song do I want? Oh yeah. Thank you for watching. Thank you, whether you're lurking or watching the VOD. Thank you, Kat, for hanging out and chatting. I hope to see you all again next time. And have a good day, have a good night, have a good week. Thank you again for watching. And also, bye-bye.